My mother cancelled my honeymoon without telling me and used my money to bail out her favorite daughter. My name is Daniel. I'm 42 years old, and I've just buried my relationship with my mother while she's still breathing. It's strange how the respect you spend decades building can be burned to ashes by a mother in a single afternoon, just to protect the ego of her preferred child. While she was calling me selfish for refusing to finance my sister's failure, I was already emptying the accounts she believed she controlled. She didn't just cancel my honeymoon behind my back. She used the money I had saved for 3 years to pay off the divorce debts of her precious girl. What she didn't know is that my patience has limits and my memory is precise. If you enjoy stories where betrayal has consequences and justice arrives without warning, make sure to like and subscribe. Here we share real stories of revenge and lessons that are never forgotten. I grew up as the child who never caused problems. At 42, I've built a solid career as an architect, grounded in discipline and in the ability to foresee mistakes before they happen. I was always the silent pillar of the family. My sister Olivia is 3 years younger than me and has always been, in my mother's words, a free spirit. To the rest of the world, Olivia is simply someone irresponsible who never learned to face the consequences of her actions. My mother, Margaret, made sure of that. Growing up, if Olivia broke something, I was the one expected to help clean it up. If Olivia failed a class, it was because teachers didn't understand her sensitivity. I, on the other hand, was expected to be perfect. I never complained. I learned early that affection in our house was a limited resource, and Olivia had already claimed all of it. I focused on my work, my peace, and eventually, my happiness. 2 years ago, I met Emily. She is the opposite of the chaos of my original family. She's intelligent, self-sufficient, and has a calm presence that makes me feel at home. We decided to get married in a small ceremony, but we wanted our honeymoon to be the trip of a lifetime. We saved every cent. It wasn't a gift from anyone. It was the result of my annual bonuses and Emily's extra shifts. We planned a month traveling across the Mediterranean, from the Greek islands to the Italian coast. We had reservations, first-class plane tickets, and excursions fully paid. It was nearly $40,000 invested in our mental health and our future. Because of trust and logistics, since she handles my administrative matters when I'm on job sites out of town, my mother had access to a joint account we used for family emergencies, where I kept the travel fund for banking security. A miscalculation that now feels like an unforgivable oversight on my part. Olivia, meanwhile, had married 5 years ago to a man who, frankly, was just as unstable as she is. 6 months ago, the house of cards collapsed. He left her for another woman, but not before maxing out the credit cards and leaving the mortgage 3 months behind. Olivia panicked. My mother switched into rescue mode. During family dinners, the only topic of conversation was Olivia's tragedy. My mother would stare at me, waiting for me to offer to pay for the lawyers, the house, and the debts. I stayed silent, cutting my steak with precision, refusing to give in. I told them clearly that I had my own expenses and that my wedding was the priority. My mother would sigh, call me cold, then turn to comfort Olivia, who cried dramatically while scrolling through designer clothing catalogs on her phone. The dynamic was obvious. I was the provider who refused to provide, and Olivia was the victim who deserved to be saved. My mother always had this distorted sense of justice, where the one who has more must give everything to the one who has nothing because of their own choices. I watched my mother sell small pieces of jewelry to help Olivia, but it wasn't enough. The divorce of the golden child was becoming expensive. Lawyers demanded upfront payments, and Olivia's house was close to foreclosure. I kept moving forward with my plans. There were only 3 weeks left before my wedding and honeymoon. The tension in my mother's house was thick, but I was at peace. I believed my boundaries were clear. I didn't know that, for a mother obsessed with her favorite child, the responsible son's boundaries are simply obstacles to be stepped over. One Tuesday afternoon, I received an email from the travel agency. The subject line read, "Cancellation confirmation and refund processed." My heart didn't race. It froze. I opened the message and read that, at the account holder's request and after a phone call confirming a family emergency, the entire honeymoon package had been cancelled. The refund didn't go to my personal card, but to the joint account. I opened my banking app. The balance was zero. $40,000 had vanished in less than an hour. There was no note, no call, just emptiness on my phone screen. In that moment, I remembered my mother's face the previous Sunday, when she asked if it was really necessary to spend so much on a simple trip while your sister has nowhere to turn. I sat in my office for an hour staring at the wall. I didn't shout. I didn't slam the desk. My mind started working the way it does when a building develops a severe structural flaw. You either demolish the compromised section to save the rest, or let everything collapse on those responsible. I called the bank. The representative confirmed that my mother had gone personally to the branch, claiming I was incapacitated, and that they needed the money to avoid an imminent family foreclosure. Since she had been listed as a co-holder for years, the bank raised no objections. The money was transferred directly to Olivia's lawyer and toward the mortgage of the luxury house she can't afford. My mother had decided that my happiness was the price Olivia wouldn't have to pay for her mistakes. That night, I went to my mother's house. I knew Olivia would be there. When I walked in, I saw them in the kitchen, laughing while sharing a bottle of wine I had probably paid for too. When she saw me, my mother's expression shifted slightly, but there was no guilt, only a kind of triumphant defiance. Olivia, meanwhile, tried to hide a smile behind her glass. The silence stretched for a full minute. I watched them with a coldness they had never seen in me before. It wasn't the obedient son standing there. It was a man who had just watched his own blood steal his future. My mother set her glass down on the table, wiped the corners of her lips, and looked at me without a trace of remorse. "It's for the good of the family, Daniel," she said in that soft voice she had used to manipulate me since I was a child. She explained with twisted logic that I was a successful man, that Emily and I had our health and time to save again, but that Olivia was in the middle of an existential and financial crisis. According to her, I didn't need that trip, but my sister needed her dignity. Olivia, meanwhile, avoided my eyes, playing with her phone, probably calculating what other luxuries she could salvage with my money. There was no apology, no promise to repay it. Just the maternal decree that my sacrifice was mandatory, because I was the strong one. I stepped closer to the table without raising my voice. My hands rested on the back of a chair, steady, not shaking. I watched them the way someone watches an inevitable accident. "That money wasn't yours," I told my mother. She shrugged and replied that technically it was in an account where she had authority. Then she added the sentence that sealed her fate. "Don't be selfish, Daniel. Your sister has suffered enough. You have Emily, you have your company. You're not going to die if you stay home for a couple of weeks." In that moment, I felt the last thread of filial affection snap under the blade of her indifference. Olivia finally chimed in that spoiled, childish tone. "Oh, Daniel, don't be so dramatic. We'll pay you back in a few years." They both laughed, a short, complicit laugh that echoed through the kitchen like a slap. I turned around and walked out of the house without another word. Silence was my only answer. As I drove, my anger wasn't fire. It was an iceberg. My mother hadn't just stolen my money. She had sabotaged the beginning of my marriage and humiliated me in front of my fiancé. I had to go home and look Emily in the eyes. I had to explain that the trip she had worked for too, the overnight shifts, the savings, the discipline, had vanished because my mother decided Olivia was worth more than we were. Seeing the pain and disappointment on Emily's face didn't make me cry. It made me decide. That night, while Emily slept a restless sleep, I sat in front of my computer. My mother believed she understood my finances, but she knew nothing about my ability to dismantle structures. The betrayal became complete the next day when I received a text message in the family group chat. My mother had posted photos of Olivia smiling in front of her house with a caption that read, "Thank God and the unity of this family, Olivia gets to keep her home. One person's sacrifice is everyone's blessing." It was the peak of her arrogance. They had used me like an ATM without my consent, and now they expected me to smile and accept the role of martyr. They didn't throw me out physically, but they expelled me from their respect. They treated me like a stranger who could be drained without consequences. That was my symbolic exile. I stopped being the son and became the creditor no one saw coming. The plan wasn't born from emotion, but from structure. The first thing I did was call my lawyer and close friend, Michael. We met at a quiet cafe. I handed him the bank statements and the history of the joint account. "She had access, Michael, but the source of the funds is 100% my salary and bonuses," I explained calmly. Michael nodded, reviewing the documents with a serious expression. He explained that while the bank hadn't made a technical mistake, the use of those funds for purposes unrelated to the co-holder's well-being, under the claim of incapacity, opened an interesting legal door. But I didn't want just a slow civil lawsuit. I wanted something that would hit where it hurt them most, their status and their sense of security. Over the following weeks, I became a shadow. I kept attending the obligatory family dinners, maintaining a mask of resignation. My mother and Olivia, convinced they had tamed me, let their guard down. Because of my profession, I knew far more about my mother's financial situation than she imagined. She was the guarantor on most of Olivia's loans, and to help her, had placed her own house as secondary collateral in a refinancing deal they made months earlier to cover the first debts of the favorite daughter. My mother had always been careless with paperwork. I, on the other hand, am a man of details. After a thorough investigation, I discovered that Olivia's lawyer, the same one who received my honeymoon money, was far from a saint. He was inflating invoices and diverting funds into a personal trust account to keep Elena's ex-husband's creditors from touching the money. It was textbook legal fraud. But the most important piece was my mother's property. She believed her house was protected, but the guarantee agreement she signed to save Olivia included a cross-default clause. If Olivia missed even a single payment on her new debt structure, my mother's house would automatically be included in the liquidation package. And Olivia, as I knew very well, was incapable of maintaining a payment plan for more than a couple of months. My strategy was patient. Instead of demanding my money back immediately, I executed a legal financial maneuver to purchase the subordinated debt on Olivia's house through an asset management company I had opened years ago for private investments. Essentially, I became the owner of her debt without them knowing. The money they stole from me became the seed that allowed me to take full control of their roofs. Emily knew everything. "I don't want the money back, Emily," I told her one night while reviewing the contracts. "I want them to feel what it's like to have nowhere to hide." She didn't stop me. She knew this wasn't just about $40,000. It was about the respect they had taken from us. I prepared the counterattack to coincide with the date when we were supposed to be in Italy. While my mother posted photos on social media of her afternoon teas with Olivia, celebrating their victory over my supposed greed, I was signing foreclosure notices. There would be no shouting, no dramatic scenes in the street. Everything would be processed through notaries and court officers. My mother sent me a message asking if I wanted to go to dinner to forget the past. I didn't reply. My silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was the time concrete needs to cure and become unbreakable. The trap was set, and they had dug the moat themselves. On the day I was supposed to land in Rome, I woke up early, not to see the Colosseum, but to watch my mother's world collapse by her own hand. At 9 in the morning, a legal team and a notary arrived at Olivia's house. There were no screams, only the dry sound of documents being served. Since I was now the holder of the debt they themselves had inflated and neglected, I enforced the default clause. Olivia, in her endless arrogance, hadn't paid even the first installment of the refinancing, assuming the bank would wait, or that I would eventually cover the gap. She was wrong. 2 hours later, the same team arrived at my mother's door. She greeted them with confusion, which quickly turned into pale terror. The house she had lived in for 30 years, the same house she used as collateral to preserve her daughter's lifestyle, no longer legally belonged to her. The pre-foreclosure process was underway due to Olivia's insolvency. My mother tried calling me desperately. I watched her name light up my phone screen once, twice, 10 times. I didn't answer. I let voicemail do its job. I wanted her to feel the emptiness I felt when I saw my savings account drained to zero. Eventually, I received a text from Olivia, filled with insults and desperation. "You're a monster. Mom is on the street because of you. Do something." I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on my terrace, and replied with a single sentence, "Don't be selfish. Family comes first. And now my family is Emily." That afternoon, I went to my mother's house only to collect the last belongings I still had there. The atmosphere was funereal. My mother sat on the couch surrounded by boxes, her eyes red. Olivia paced back and forth, shouting on the phone at lawyers who could no longer do anything because I had closed every legal exit. My mother looked at me, perhaps searching for a trace of guilt in my eyes. "Daniel, how could you do this to us? I'm your mother," she sobbed. I remained standing, hands in my pockets, observing her with technical coldness. "You didn't lose your house today, Mom," I said slowly. "You lost it the day you decided my effort was worth less than Olivia's whims. You cancelled my honeymoon. I simply cancelled your impunity." There were no warm goodbyes. Olivia tried to step toward me to insult me, but I only raised a hand and reminded her that legally I was now the indirect owner of the roof, still covering her for a few more days. Her silence was absolute. The consequences didn't take long to arrive. My mother had to move into a small rented apartment, paid for with what little remains of her retirement, a place far removed from the status she loved to show off. Olivia, for her part, lost the luxury house and ended up sleeping on a friend's couch because the favorite daughter turned out to be a burden too heavy for anyone who wasn't our mother. Olivia's lawyer is now under investigation for the irregularities my legal team reported. Justice wasn't fast, but it was precise. I didn't recover my $40,000 in cash, but I bought something far more valuable: my complete freedom from their manipulation. Emily and I didn't go to the Mediterranean that year. We got married in a private ceremony, just the two of us and a couple of real friends. Over time, we saved again and planned a different trip, one that didn't carry the weight of the past. My relationship with my mother is non-existent. She still tries to send messages at Christmas talking about forgiveness and how time heals everything, but I know it isn't regret she feels. It's the absence of my wallet. She doesn't miss her son. She misses the privileges her son provided. I've learned that blood is only tissue, not a contract of servitude. Many people expect that at the end of stories like this, the protagonist forgives and the family embraces in tears. That's for movies. In real life, if you allow someone to steal your happiness once under the excuse of family love, you're giving them permission to do it for the rest of your life. I decided that my loyalty ends where betrayal begins. Today I sleep peacefully. My home is in order, and my life has no room for parasites, no matter whose womb they came from. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's watching life collect its debts. If this story felt as intense to you as it was for me to live it, leave a like and tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if you're not subscribed yet, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories.